Hi, my name's Adele Sliuzas. I'm the Visual Arts Curator here at the Mill. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that we're gathered here on the lands of the Kaurna people and pay respect to elders past and present, and acknowledge the contribution that they make to our culture here in Garniata. We're going to have a bit of a chat. It's going to be lovely. But we'll keep it fairly casual, so if you do want to get up and grab another drink, or if you want to go to the loo or whatever, don't feel like you need to stay in your seat the whole time, that's fine. Toilets just through that door there. I might ask you all to hold your questions to the end though, and then we've got a bit of time that we can have a bit of a chat, and feel free to have a think about something you'd like to ask. That's nice. So thanks so much, Chris, for being here to chat about your work. This body of work, Riot on an Empty Street, is the outcome of Residency. So Chris spent 6 months with us here at the Mill in the studio out back, supported by the Mahmood Martin Foundation. And this is the outcome of that, so it's really fantastic. I'll just read you his bio so you all know. Chris C is a Hong Kong-born photographic artist living and working on Garniata. Informed by the traditions of documentary photography, Chris's work investigates and chronicles the intricate relationships that lie within his surrounding social landscapes. His practice is profoundly influenced by the flux of socio-political happenings in his homeland Hong Kong and his ever-changing place within it. Through exploring notions of layered histories and geopolitics, Chris's work seeks to offer a reflection on personal and communal experience, pivoting around representations of civil unrest, diasporic experience, cultural displacement, and marginality within contemporary existence. Ooh. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
So I'll just start by asking you to tell us a little bit about how you came to be an artist and what's brought you to this point in your life now.
I got exposed to photography from a really young age because my father is the kind of travel photography enthusiast, so he was like a huge hobbyist. So I got exposed to taking photos from a really young age, and we would take family trips to from the outskirts of Hong Kong to other countries in Southeast Asia. And I had this small point-and-shoot camera when I was young, and I would, just for my family, go to places and take snapshots and stuff. So that's kind of how it started, I guess. And fast forward to 2016, I was 14 years old, and I was going to this, government, really traditional Chinese secondary school in Hong Kong, and studying back there became quite challenging. So I was struggling a bit to cope with academics and stuff. So my family decided to send me here to Adelaide to live with my aunt's family and to go to school here. And at that time I wasn't really a creative kid, by all means. I was into sports, playing tennis 5 days a week, and I guess after a year or two, I kind of got sick of it. I decided to put sports at rest and do something else maybe. And it was around that time that I met a friend at school who was also into photography, just starting out, trying to take photos, and we would carry out digital cameras. It was my dad's camera, this big old DSLR camera, and we would just wander around the streets in the city to take photos of literally anything, like tourist photos, street photos, and that's when I first started to take photos on a regular basis. And it wasn't until university that I really started to approach photography seriously, or making photos with clear intention, but I guess that also has a lot to do with going back to Hong Kong after secondary school here, and the protests, and also COVID happened and all that. Like it was quite complicated experience and process. Don't know how deep you want me to get into here, but I think we'll get to that.
Comfortable to, yeah, we'll talk about that more.
Yeah. Like go on with your next question. I think
Yeah.
we'll get to that eventually.
I mean, I think what's interesting hearing a bit more about that as well is you show so much discipline in your practice, and I think that you say you went to tennis 5 times a week. There's so much discipline that goes into playing a sport like that, and I can see how you've translated the energy that you maybe were putting into that into your practice as a photographer. So cool to hear about. Yeah, for sure. So much discipline. Okay, so my next question. Riot on an Empty Street is your latest collection in the ongoing project that's called Then We Keep Living. So you might have seen Chris's work previously in Solo Show at Nexus, or...
This is like kind of like a midway overview of the whole project. Picking out like a selection of photos.
Yeah, I saw some of the work in the UniSA graduate exhibition and I was really taken by it, and so pleased that Chris applied for this residency so that we could get the work in the gallery, so it's very cool. You write in your artist statement, this is an exploration that takes place against the backdrop of the 2019 mass civil unrest in Hong Kong, followed by my life in diaspora and here in Australia. So I think it's a little bit important to start by giving a little bit of context to the political situation in Hong Kong, and also for you to give us a bit of an understanding about what it's like to make work that's about Hong Kong but from here, and about your relationship with your place here and then back home, and there's a lot of that happens in this exhibition. Many of you probably know a bit about it, some of you maybe more than less. We definitely all saw it on the news, but yeah, if you could talk a bit about your personal experience and how you brought that into the conversation here.
Do you want me to like give a bit more context about like the political situation in Hong Kong, or
maybe just like a sentence or two?
Yeah, so it's a bit hard to simplify into a sentence or two, but I try. It's probably going to be more than a sentence or two, but yeah. So as you probably know, Hong Kong was ruled by the British for over 150 years. So when Hong Kong was handed back over to China, it was guaranteed that Hong Kong people would remain their way of life for 50 years until 2047. And it was also promised that Hong Kong people would eventually enjoy democracy and to develop a democratic system and to have the right to elect their own leader and government. But looking back, that didn't really happen, or it hasn't happened yet. And in 2019, the government tried to introduce a law that would allow fugitive extradition from Hong Kong to mainland China. And that became quite concerning for most people in Hong Kong because I think one of the major things that distinct Hong Kong with mainland China is we have a separate judicial system that most people believe are reliable and fair to an extent. And it was concerning for most people that by allowing extradition between Hong Kong and China, that it would undermine the autonomy of Hong Kong, and it would potentially be used as a tool to suppress political dissidents. And so shortly after the government announced their plans to introduce the law, Hong Kong people took the streets to protest, and then 2 million people came out, but the government refused to withdraw the bill, and that gradually evolved into a citywide mass protest. And also it became a broader movement that is beyond the bill, and it was also about the right to enjoy democracy and the things that were promised when Hong Kong was handed to China. So, alright, back to the personal side of it.
I guess I also, like, I don't want you to talk too much about it because I also think that, like, it's our personal responsibilities to learn more about these things. It's not your job to necessarily teach us, but a little bit of context is good for you to talk about.
Yeah, okay, so I was studying here, still studying here, back in 2019, and at the end of 2019 I graduated from high school, and then I went back to Hong Kong. So initially the plan was to go back there for a couple of months and then come back, start uni here, but you know, COVID happened, lockdown, all that, stayed back in Hong Kong for the next 2.5 years. And yeah, so when I went back to Hong Kong at the end of 2019, I interned at this really small online media, and occasionally I would take photos at the protest at the front line, and yeah, that's when some of the photos here were made. And yeah, and after a while, COVID happened, and because of that, the protest, you know, gradually died down a little bit. And then it was also around the time that the first national security law was introduced in Hong Kong. So it was this really strange time of, you know, really abrupt transition in the city. And also around the time, a lot of people started to migrate out of Hong Kong. And yeah, that's when I started making a lot of the photos in Hong Kong that eventually became a part of the project. So at the start of 2022, I returned back to Australia to finish off uni and all that. And yeah, so after coming back here, I had to think about, okay, so what photos am I going to take now? Like, what work am I going to make? And I think the idea was still to make work about Hong Kong in any sort of ways. I didn't really know how, didn't really know what to do, but yeah, that was the idea. And so eventually for my graduate project at uni, I made a series of black and white work about Hong Kong, or my experience as a Hong Konger living outside of Hong Kong, and to respond to that experience that could, you know, potentially relate to people who left Hong Kong voluntarily or not, and the whole, you know, growing diaspora. And yeah, so that's how I started the black and white series that you see in the second volume of the project. Yeah, so that was kind of the experience.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll touch on more things as we move through.
Yeah.
The other couple of questions as well.
Gotta keep asking me more.
Yeah, that's right. So I think one of the things that's so striking about this exhibition is the tension that you hold between the different works, and certainly it was my privilege to be able to visit Chris in his studio as he was working out which works would get included and where they would sit in the gallery to create this tension. So you can see that there's beauty and balance with the violence, there's stillness and there's chaos, there's the Hong Kong, Australia sort of tension, but also the body and absence, which, you know, that's not maybe something that you would naturally think would fit into a series like this, but it gives it, it brings the person, I think, back into the space, or that absence of a person as well, to create that tension. Yeah, so I wanted to see if you could speak a little bit about how you've used that as a device throughout the series.
I think one of the very important things to note in the project is that it doesn't really, all the photos don't really involve a clear profile of the people. Maybe it's not so obvious in this context or in this exhibition because of the selection of the work, but most of the photos don't present a clear image of a person, or in some cases the people holds a relatively small place within the image, and I think that's probably because, and also I made the artistic choice to not to involve any portraiture, or not to involve any clear portraiture in the series. I think that's because one of the ideas is to kind of represent the lack of discourse power of Hong Kong people. I think historically, from being taken over by the British and then being handed over to Communist China, Hong Kong people were never a part of the discourse or a part of the negotiation, and but somehow we just keep living in this continual flux of forces that shape the social condition and our lives. But somehow we're still here. So that's one of the more intentional artistic choices I made. And so going back to the first volume, when I first started the project, I started making pictures without a project or a body of work in mind. So I wasn't setting any kind of parameters for myself. I was just taking pictures in Hong Kong, trying to document or communicate like the times we were living in. As I said earlier, it was kind of it was a really strange atmosphere in the city because of the COVID protest, the whole transition, national security law, the exodus. So I felt this really great urgency to make pictures about it. But it was never set to be a body of work, or I didn't really have an emphasized body of work when I was making those pictures. And also I was kind of still finding my own visual language, because I just started to approach my photography practice more seriously and more methodically. So and I wasn't really able to clearly articulate what I was doing and all that. It wasn't until I started the second volume when I returned here to finish uni, and at that final year of uni, I feel like I've learned quite a lot and understand a lot more about my own practice, and it was during that year that I started to learn more about what I was actually doing to be able to speak about my intention or the methodologies and all that I was, employing in my practice or even previously when I was taking photos in Hong Kong. So and after COVID in 2022, I came back here, and I wasn't feeling the brightest at that time. Feeling quite sad coming back here, leaving friends and family, and and also the urgency to make work is still there. So I started to see how I could potentially communicate that feeling, by making work that resonate to that longing to Hong Kong. And sorry, just having a look at my notes.
No, that's alright.
And I still remember the first photo that I made for the project. It was this photo of Hong Kong grocery in Chinatown. And after I made this photo, I looked at it and, I was like, that's great, that's a good start. It literally says Hong Kong. It gives context. It tells you that we're looking for something about Hong Kong that isn't Hong Kong, because I don't think you can find a Hong Kong grocery in Hong Kong. You wouldn't say, it wouldn't tell you it's Hong Kong grocery if it's in Hong Kong. So but after making this photo, I started to realize it was probably way more challenging than I expected, because I feel like I was searching for this subject that doesn't really have a physical presence, and also I guess because how I was feeling at that time, I wasn't really interested in going out or looking at the external reality and context. So I began to look at subjects that are more personal and intimate, or subjects that are on a smaller scale and that are closer to me in any sort of ways. And so that resulted in subjects like, the newspaper, passport, I mean, they're not here, but my bed.
Yeah, the sheets.
Yeah, the bed sheets, and tattoo of a really close friend. And I think in the black and white series that kind of took a turn in aesthetical choices or methodical choices. It became less about documenting or outward looking. It, like, instead of serving as a window to the outside world, it's more like a mirror that looks at the self. And so that's the choices of subjects and how they become like vehicles for representing those ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's the intimacy that those works bring to the series bolster the sense of longing that are in the other photographs as well. So yeah, the bed sheets. I've always been drawn to the bed sheets. I love them because it puts my body in that space as well, and then that space is alongside these. I mean, the Hong Kong Grocer is obviously like a very familiar and iconic place for us here, and has a completely different meaning for you, thinking about the relationship between home and this place that's obviously not quite the same as home. Yeah.
And I also think because of the choice of subjects and the whole shift in methodology, the photos became a lot more ambiguous. And instead of, like I said, showing what was happening outside, like it was more that apart from the subjects in the photos were also suggesting things that are beyond the frame, and also more evocative in a way, I think, because of that ambiguous nature and that intimacy.
And so in making in the new work that you've made for this exhibition, some of the things that have come in here are obviously from your archive, and then there's other new work that you've made during the time. How did it feel going out and taking photographs here versus doing that in Hong Kong where you felt so purposeful?
It's obviously a lot harder to do it here because, I guess, at this stage of the project, every photo that I take, like before I press the shutter button, like there's this calculation in my head that, I think about what's the relationship I have with this subject, how does this photo would potentially contribute to the project, and I ended up taking less and less photos because, like I said earlier, I almost feel like I'm searching for something that, doesn't really exist, or doesn't really have a physical presence. And I feel like the works I make here were never really happy work. Not in a way that I was really happy taking photos in Hong Kong, but it felt more liberating in a way that there's more that I could encounter going out in Hong Kong, in comparison to here.
Certainly I can see that the work that the body of work does isn't necessarily in the work that individual works do, but in that relationship and tension between works, that the thing that you're looking for isn't in the frame, it's between them.
And also I guess it's it's also meaningful to think about okay, what's happening between the photos. It's photography, it's very limited subject. What you're saying, it's 200th of a second, and it's also meaningful to think about. Okay, so what's happening between these photos when we're seeing them as a series? What's in between them? What's in between those times and those subjects, those people? So.
Fantastic. We're really stoked that you are running a workshop next weekend, and unfortunately, if you haven't got a ticket already, it is sold out. So I'm very excited about it. It's about crafting narratives through series, so we've kind of touched on that a little bit already. But I wondered if you could talk a little bit about some of the ideas that you'll be sharing with that group of people in the workshop that are about how do you think about creating something that's in a series? How do you build that tension between things?
I was going to work it out next week. But, okay. I think some of the major themes and ideas would be, obviously developing photographic narratives through a series of work instead of focusing on an individual. And, I just graduated from my bachelor's, and I don't really have any sort of teaching knowledge and experience, and I don't think I, have the keys to photography, But so.
And you can't teach a workshop that's about how to be a photographer in couple of hours anyway. So.
I don't know how to be a photographer.
Yeah.
And I want to approach the workshop through my own experience and kind of learning curve that I had, because when I first started out taking photos, all I cared about is making a photo that looks pretty, or to look for pretty subjects to make a good photo, in a way that it fits into the traditional aesthetics of photography, like kind of photos that you see on, I don't know, National Geographic and stuff. So, and then, gradually, like after uni, I learned about the work of great photographers, like especially the kind of road trip or American photographic series, like artists like Alex Sove, Stephen Shaw and stuff. They were always a major inspiration for me in my practice. And so I guess the idea is to express that sometimes you don't have to find the most spectacular of subjects to make something meaningful. And we could just, it could also be really impactful to examine and to look at our everyday surroundings, and to express our feelings for it through photographic series. And and also I guess by putting together a series of photos, it is to show others the way we look at stuff. Like it's almost like we're teaching other people how to see, or well, not necessarily teaching, but we're showing people how to see the world, and I think that's the central idea of the workshop.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what each of those participants come up with in those couple of hours that we spend together, how they see the world, how they want to share the way that they see things. So, it's exciting. So, sorry if you haven't got a ticket. Better get quick next time. So I thought that this is the last question and then we'll move on to audience questions, but thought we'd do like a little bit of a deep dive into a couple of images, because definitely I've had a learning curve in my visual literacy of Hong Kong and a few things. I sat us in front of this work because I wanted to start chatting about this. I think it's such a powerful image, and the way that Chris has put it, so that you have to come in and around the corner and be close to it really before you get to see it. Really fantastic curation. So if you could have a little chat with us about Protest and One Chai.
So these two photos were taken on the same day. It was, I believe, July the 1st, on July the 1st, 2020, which is the day that the first national security law was enacted in Hong Kong. And also it was the anniversary of the handover of Hong Kong to China. And on that day, the first national security law was introduced in Hong Kong, so people took the streets, and I was working that day for the media and ended up taking these two photos. So, anything more you want me to add?
Yeah, I guess I know for most of us here in Australia, on that day in July, we were stuck inside our houses, and it definitely feels like there's a big contrast between that and taking to the streets, because what is happening is so much more powerful, and you need to be present and involved and making sure that, or trying to change things. But yeah, I don't know, they're powerful images because it's frightening to think of how different this is from my experience on that day, and
I
like,
guess
scary to think that you were standing so close.
yeah, I guess I can also relate to that feeling, like more or less, because you know, after coming back here, you know, it's like what happened 5 years ago, like almost felt like a dream, you know, like I think during those times, for a lot of people, especially young people in Hong Kong, you know, it almost felt like, no, it was nothing else really mattered anymore, you know, that was, you know, all or nothing kind of thing, you know, like, you know, some people like were literally dying, and so yeah, yeah, like that was the only thing that people cared about at the time, and then, you know, and after the protest finished, and then I came back here, you know, and then, you know, if now, like, we start to realise, like, we keep living, you know, like, still gotta pay the bills, all that, and yeah, I guess that's also the idea of the whole body of work, because it's titled "Then We Keep Living," and for most people, or if you're saying this from like a journalistic point of view, like the story was over like after the protest, and usually no one really knows what happens after a major event like this, not only in the context of Hong Kong, like, you know, for most people the story was over, but for the people there, you know, what happens next, you know, and yeah, and part of the intention is to communicate that, and still to have our own voice after the protest, or, you know, after a major event like this, like in a broader context. Yeah.
Definitely. The next one I'd love us to have a chat about are the two. The National Day of the People's Republic of China, which is this one here, and then the tattoo of wilting Bohemia. Which, you know, these two images are so different in terms of their content, but then linked by the tattoo and that symbol. So, do you want to chat a little bit about that?
Yeah, so first of all, the Bohemia is the emblem and the flag of Hong Kong. So that was taken on the National Day of People's Republic of China. I can't remember what year, potentially 2021, 2020.
I didn't copy and paste it, sorry.
That's okay. But yeah. So yeah, you know, on that day, the government would put up like a sea of flags around the city, and that was a photo that I made on that day. And you know, you see in the foreground, that is the flag of China, and then on the top right corner, that is the flag of Hong Kong. And in the black and white photo of the tattoo, that shows wilting Bohemia, or in other words, the black Bohemia, which was a prominent symbol during the protest. You know, that symbolized the kind of the rottenness, or like the dying of the Bohemia or Hong Kong. And yeah, another interesting thing that is the Bohemia flower. It is actually a species that can't be reproduced naturally.
Mm.
It is an artificial species that
Okay.
can't be reproduced naturally. So I think that kind of speaks to something.
Mm.
Weird choice of symbol by the government.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And speaks a lot to the historical context of Hong Kong as well, I guess.
Yeah, I love the the intimacy in that photograph, the being able to see the texture of that person's skin, and knowing that a tattoo like that is a statement and a protest, and
Also something you carry for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And in contrast with this, which is very official, and there's a lot of people have come together to make all of these flags come up at the same time, and it's government, and it's almost not so much about an individual at all.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. And then the last one that I wanted you to speak about was silent protest, which now I can't remember. Is it
At
the main one?
the back of
Oh yeah, this one.
on the side here, hanging work.
Yeah, on that
Yeah,
side. So sorry, you
that
guys
white
can't see, but you have to look later. And I mean, I guess that also maybe if you could speak to the relationship between that and the first work as well, which I obviously can't remember the name.
So both of the work hanging back to back, they're both both the hanging work facing back to back are of a slogan that was ubiquitous, used to be ubiquitous in Hong Kong. It says, 光復香港，時代革命, which translates to liberate Hong Kong, the revolution of our times. And that slogan, it became illegal after the first national security law was enacted because it was deemed as what's the word? Sedition. Yeah. Thank you. So right now in Hong Kong, if you display or if you say that slogan, you can go to prison up to a life sentence. And the coloured photo facing the hallway was taken, I think, shortly after the national security law was enacted in Hong Kong, and that shows a fragment of it being torn down by cleaners with the swirls on a window on the footbridge, and then the black and white facing the gallery is of the same slogan taken in the silent protest at Rundle Mall last year. And to give a bit of context, since 2020 or since 2019, a lot of people have been migrating out of Hong Kong because of the social, political situation, and then and after that, a lot of people overseas started to hold different kinds of protest, in the UK, in Australia, Canada, every year to I want to say commemorate, but that feels like such a wrong word, you know.
Yeah, to support.
Yeah, to show support
Yeah.
for Hong Kong.
And that's the July date. Is that right? That same date that this.
That's the June the 12th, which is exactly 4 years after the start of the protest in Hong Kong. So yeah, that's definitely a bit of relationship between the hanging work and yeah, that's it.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Chris. I'll open it up to questions.
I've seen your work like 3 times at this point. And I feel like every time I hear you talk about your work, I learn something new. And I find it really interesting, as somebody who's also coming from Hong Kong, like you talk so much about the absence, both like of human subjects in your photos, the space between the time that has elapsed between the protest and now, the frequency of which you take photos decreasing, and that's like a conversation that we, Chris and I talked about a lot. And I guess as both a fellow Hong Konger and as an artist, I wonder if for you, both as Chris and also Chris the artist, did you feel like the sense of Hong Konger as an identity, or like the sense of Hong Kongness, did you feel like that cemented for you more after you left Hong Kong and making work here, or has it felt more elusive for you? Or it could be both.
As in, how I feel, like what it means to me.
Yeah, I guess
as
what it means.
a Hong Konger.
Yeah, or like what does
identity
Hong Kongness mean to you, or do you find that like kind of becoming blurrier as you're making works here away from home?
I still feel quite strongly as a Hong Konger, but I guess the identity was never for me like an identity that empowers my work or my creative practice. You get what I mean? So it was never for me like I'm making work because I'm Hong Kong, I'm a Hong Konger, or I'm representing Hong Kong people, or I'm making work for the Hong Kong people. It was never like that for me, but it was more like a personal, intimate identity rather than a representation of the self, if that makes sense.
It does. I think like the way I interpret it is more like, you could correct me if I'm wrong, it's almost like this religious experience of like Hong Kongness, where when people are like, your relationship to your religion is like personal. It's like not about like proving to other people like who you are and like what you do to prove that that's who you are. And that's like, I don't know. Like there's something about your work that's like very ethereal, I guess, like in its identity that I really love. So
I
thank
think,
you.
I was never trying to impose that identity or the broader political my political opinion on my fields. Like that was never the intention. And and also this doesn't really directly answer your question, but I think so this is going to take a while, but
I'm so sorry.
that's okay. So it's a bit off topic, but to be honest, for the past year or so, it was up until a month or 2 ago, I've been feeling really empty and completely detached from my own work, my own voice, or my previous work. Like I just felt, empty. And also it was around the time that I graduated from uni, started exhibiting, And yeah, and to be completely honest, all these exhibitions, including this one, it was done at the state that I felt completely detached from my creative work. So yeah, there were a few artistic choices that I made that I kind of regret now, 2 months after the show. One of them is perhaps, am I trying to impose a certain political agenda on my viewers? Am I going too hard on speaking out about something? And yeah, that is kind of what I've been.
Do you feel like you've gone too hard?
A little bit, I think, or I would have done things a little bit differently if I had to do it now. Yeah, and yeah, but despite that, I think now it still shows the conceptual foundation of the project, or perhaps it tells you why I was motivated to make work or to start this project in the first place.
And certainly, the work isn't confined to this political space either. It's because of the elements of the body of work that you have brought in that are about intimacy and personhood and bodies in space and no bodies in space, and the relationship between a place here and a place there. It is political, and there are political parts of it, and being a person is being political, but there are also parts of this exhibition that you can think of. You don't have to even think with your brain, you can just think with your body. Which I think, so that's why we're so drawn to so many of the things in this room as well. Yeah. It's good not to think with your brain for a little while. Yeah. Cool. Does anyone else have a question?
What would you do different? Like if you were to do it now?
Good question. I'd say the selection of works and some of the sequencing. And also, I don't know, maybe it turns out if I had to do it again, maybe the physical outcome wouldn't be so different, but the way I approached it would be very different.
Yeah, I think, it also gives an opportunity that the next exhibition will approach in a different way and bring in different things, and that's kind of exciting for for the people who have seen a few exhibitions in a row now, to be able to see what does change with this next iteration. What is the power of a series that continues to grow, and not just the relationship between works in the space, but a relationship between these works in this space and the works that were in the space last time. Yeah, very cool.
Also, I'm kind of planning to take a break from exhibiting, showing my work, and focus more on making the work, and to make the work, I feel like for me I really have to be isolated to an extent, and to experience the everyday, and to respond to it. And I feel like that's going to take a while before going on to the next major exhibition or show.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. I think we probably have time for one more question, if anyone has anything. I know Chloe wanted to ask what kind of camera you use.
That might be confidential information though.
I use a Mamiya RZ67, which is a medium format analog camera. Yeah.
Cool.
And I shoot on Poitra 400 most of the time, in case you're wondering.
Yeah.
And HP5 Ilford.
How many rolls of film have you gone through for this project? Do you think?
I didn't keep count, but I think 200, something like that. That's a lot of money.
So if everyone would like to buy one artwork tonight, keep on funding
To show your
Chris to
support.
make work. Thank you so much, Chris. It's been so wonderful
Thank you.
having you
And
speak.
lastly, it's been a pleasure working with you, and I really wanted to take this moment to thank you and Demille for allowing this creative space, physical space and creative space. It's I feel like it's definitely not an easy thing for an arts organisation or institution to support artists and artwork that could be potentially politically controversial. So thank you.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to
And,
have you
thanks
here.
for having me.
Yeah, I mean, we wish that you could stick around. Again, buy some more artworks and support
True.
an artist. Yeah. So it's been so great having you. And like I said, we do have the workshop coming up next weekend, but we will have a finissage at the end of the exhibition as well if you wanted to come back and have another look if you haven't seen it without all of the chairs in the room too. So yeah, anyway, thank you so much, Chris. I should probably say thank you to Mahmood Martin Foundation as well, who has supported the sponsored studio.
Oh yeah,
visual
thank you
artists.
to my sponsors.
Yes, and